but it is certainly not creating that capacity for the person to be able to access that money. So how do we create a system that can be sustainable in terms of supporting capacity building in Africa, centers of excellence that can sustain skills that are able to really move us from this common narrative of big finances being mobilized to a realistic narrative where these finances are brought to the ground? And this is the fundamental question of this session. So thank you very much. And I hope we can, really unpack some of these questions much more effectively. Back to you, Hassan. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Atela. Very, very precise. And I've picked something very important. The need not to get lost in mobilization. We know that everything looks good on paper. For instance, you've mentioned the recently announced loss and damage fund that has been announced in COP27. But how do we transition from the mobilization to actual action? I think this is the discussion we need to really focus on. And thank you for setting a good agenda for that. And now we take over to Michael. Michael is going to help share the MDC Fellowship Survey presentation, where several fellows, where I'm also part of the MDC Fellowship program. I had a survey across different African countries and regarding the state of MDC. So Michael, please come, you're welcome, take over and share the survey findings. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Hassan. Can you confirm that you hear me and see the screen shared?
Yes, we can hear you. We can see the screen you have shared.
Thank you very much. And thanks to Dr. Atela for this inspirational opening remarks, where I would really like to take the opportunity to underline his main messages is also with regards to the existing capacities. So within the, I try to keep myself brief, within the collaboration between ARIN and Frankfurt School, we decided, we established like a large survey where we asked with the aim to really assess the dynamics on the NDC finance landscape with specific respect on existing actors, available domestic flows, and funding needs. And we had really the intention to make this as a bottom-up exercise to gather insightful and rich information from the ground. So we developed this kind of survey in 2021 through various virtual multiple rounds by the fellows within the program. We collected then more than 400 responses, and they came from a third came from public actors working in Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Education, is really like on the next to the development of the NDCs. Then we had like a large number of 1/3 from private sector associations in order to also see what their views are in terms of how to mobilize and what is needed to do so, and also like 1/3 on civil society organizations. So it is a very, very brief summary, and I want just to highlight you the most important and pressing points in that sense. So what we asked the fellows and the respondents overall was one question: it is the national budget, is it sufficiently allocated to achieve the NDCs? So you won't surprise to see this results here, where the dark blue ones tend to be saying that this is not the case, and this is like a very, very clear sign. And as it is nothing, as all people, this is like in common space, but it is essential to have this on the paper and have this like gathered in this bottom-up type. So there are huge funding gaps with regard to the national budget when it comes to NDCs, and most of the NDCs are conditional, and only a small share is unconditional, and there is no kind of investment plan or clear opportunity how those resources are mobilized. So in a follow-up question, then we asked the respondents that what do they think about the importance of like having a financing strategy? And this is like for you as further explanation, like modes of and financing development plan, so to say, is about really like a pathway about, okay, how are we going to mobilize that kind of resources needed? Will it be from the budget? Will it be from like international engagement? Will it be like from capital markets? Are we going to establish capital markets? Are we going to like considering listing of corporates, of public firms, state-owned entities? So there are many opportunities, but they are so far quite unaddressed. So the result was also then crystal clear. So you can see here that the development of a dedicated financing strategy for NDC implementation is very important, and we received from all types of respondents huge agreement, as you can see here in the green bars, as most of them say that, yes, this makes sense. It is really necessary to do so. And that means for better financial planning, we can also confirm that here policy action is clearly needed. So there needs within the institutional ministerial sphere some kind of activities in coordinating, establishing steering committees for creating strategies or giving mandates to ministries to work out investment plans. So this is something here that this is largely connected with like policy action. So finally, I have one more result here, and this is on the opportunities also, how to mobilize resources. And as we all discuss many times about increasing investments in low carbon opportunities, it's also of great interest to reduce harmful activities from the balance sheet. So we asked the respondents that like redirecting investments away from climate harmful activities towards low carbon and climate resilient ones, which is like directly related to the Paris Agreement's purpose article, one can create a positive cascading effect for mobilizing finance for NDCs. And we didn't expect such a great agreement in this on this question, as especially also for in the discussion about revolutionizing or exploitation of fossil fuel reserves is getting attention in many African countries and beyond. We received many respondents that they think, yes, that's true. Redirecting investments can support mobilizing finance for NDCs, as the global trend is moving towards low carbon energy generation, low carbon infrastructure, smart agriculture, ecosystem-based water treatment systems. So there is this kind of a trend, and this can lead to like a large mobilization effect. So with this is actually my quick input already done. I thank you very much for your attention at this point. Feel free to reach out if you want to see the full survey. We have like in total 20 questions in that style, and had also kind of an evaluation done. So I will type my contact in the chat, and please feel free to reach out to me. And with this, I would give back the word to Hassan. Thanks for the opportunity, and have a great last day of the conference. Thanks, Hassan. Back to you.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you for being prompt. Please do reach out to Michael. He's going to share his contact if you need more of the reports. So it's a very interesting report, and you could find the interesting findings there. We are going to move forward with the next session, which is a panel discussion. Our panel discussion is, unfortunately, we are running out of time, so we need to be as brief as possible. But we are going to have Ashraf Migade, Ashraf is with the Makerere University Business School, so he's going to moderate this panel. Ashraf, please, I welcome you to come on board, introduce your panel, and let's start right away.
Well, thank you very much, Hassan. This is a nice feeling that we're discussing climate financing. Today, we are yet to also share ideas and hear from the experts regarding climate financing strategies as it has been laid out clearly by the former speakers. My name is Ashraf Nigeri, and I would like to represent Dr. Mary Ntongo, who is not feeling well today, on behalf of the Sustainability Policy and Research Center for Makerere University Business School. We're really happy to have this partnership with the ARIN so that we can be able to do something and contribute to climate financing mechanism towards NDC implementation in Uganda. Well, to start with, I'd like to introduce the panelists that I have today. And without wasting any minute, we have our first panelist who will be Dr. Dennis Mugaga. As you can see, he has already introduced himself by the chart, and he's the acting head of the new climate finance unit at the Ministry of Finance, Planning, and also Economic Development in Uganda. We're glad to be with you, Dr. Dennis. Could you please switch on the camera? Is it possible, Hassan, to I don't know, is Dr. Mugaga, can you be able to see on video?
Yes,
Hassan,
here.
could you
I hope you can see me.
Yeah, thank you very much. We have Dr. Dennis, and then number two, we're going to also be in this panel, we're going to be having Professor Oso Balunya. And Professor Oso Balunya, to just introduce a little bit about him, is currently the principal of Makerere University Business School, and he has over 30 years of experience in teaching and lecturing. He has led the team that started private programs at this university. He's my mentor, he's my coach. I also went through Makerere University Business School, and I'm proud of it. He also holds a PhD in entrepreneurship from the University of Stirling. He's been a member of different boards, Frankfurt Uganda, Airlines, and very many of these. Is it possible to also have Professor on video so that we can see him? Professor, you can say hello.
We can see him.
Yeah, but you're muted, eh? Professor is muted.
I can see myself, yes.
Yeah, nice to see you.
Thank you.
Well, to talk about our third panelist today, we're going to be also hearing from Dr. Christine. Dr. Christine is going to be representing the Frankfurt School of Management. And a little about Dr. Christine also. She has been so fundamental in the NDC fellowship, together with the collaboration with the ARIN. Most of the fellows that we heard from today, including Hassan Sawaje, these are some of the outputs from the efforts of the ARIN together with the Frankfurt School of Management. Please, Dr. Christine, you can come out so that we can hear a hello.
One comment from Frankfurt School, Michael here speaking. Kristen has some technical issues at the moment. She texted me and she will try to solve it. And then we let's see. I think it makes sense to continue with it and then come back to her.
Okay. Thank you very much. And then finally, for this panel, we should also be hearing from Dr. Olufons from the African Development Bank. Dr. Olufons, please, you can switch on your video so that we can see a hello from you. Hi,
good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, Dr. Dr. Somorin is a professional with interdisciplinary competencies that cut across a lot of domains and sources, the PhD, of course, from Wageningen and University of the Netherlands. I'm very happy to be your moderator for this panel. And without further ado, I'd like to invite Dr. Dennis so that we can hear from Dr. Dennis Gaga as a panelist. Dr. Dennis, we would like to hear from you. As a policymaker, what do you see as the key capacity gap or key capacity gaps for climate financing in government, private sector, and the civil society? So as you are trying to highlight these gaps or the key capacity gaps in climate financing, we're also interested in seeing what strategies, hearing what strategies can these various stakeholders adopt and try to either close the gaps entirely or try to do something about it. Dennis, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ashraf, and good morning, everyone. As have been introduced, my name is Dennis Mugaga. I work with the Ministry of Finance, but I'm currently the acting head of the Climate Finance Unit that has been created at the Ministry. First of all, I'd like to thank the Makerere University Business School for inviting me for this event, and also to thank ARIN for also being part of this and also organizing this. On the onset, before I go into the question, I would just like to say that Uganda recently submitted its updated NDC, which is looking at having 24.1% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. And this is attributed to an amount of financing that is up to around 28.1 billion, 4 of which are national investments, then 24 external financing. Under that, we also have a number of interventions in adaptation and mitigation. But for the topic today, emphasizing the PROPOA in terms of climate action, I think it speaks much at the ambitions that Uganda has in terms of the adaptation that we intend to have. Now, going to the question, there are a number of capacity issues that I can speak to, but in terms of government, obviously most of the speakers before have talked about capacity enhancement in the area of developing bankable projects. So that is one of the areas that we should be looking at critically. As a practitioner in terms of climate finance, under these different financing mechanisms under the UNFCCC, I've noticed that we have challenges in terms of having national projects that speak to this PROPOA that meet the standards for the financiers internationally. So that cuts across for both government, private sector, but then even the civil society. What they produce outside is not up to the standards that we think. Now, as government, we also are lacking capacity in terms of clearly articulating the interventions in our budgets. We have a budget that we run, and we have that speaks to the NDP targets. But then it is not so clear that we can pick out and say these interventions clearly speak to climate action or green development. So that is a challenge and a capacity gap that we need to address, clearly indicating that. Now, in terms of also government, we need to have a green taxonomy. I'm sure most of you have heard about this. The green taxonomy details what activities are green in every sector. Now, if you go to the agriculture sector, what can you attribute to climate change or climate financing? We also have a capacity gap because internationally, these capital markets, financial markets, provide a lot of support towards climate action for private sector, but then also for the PROPOA. So we need to, the fact that our capital markets are not developed is also a capacity gap that is affecting the climate financing in Uganda and then in Africa as a whole. We also have a challenge that if you look at our financial sector, the products that we need to undertake in the climate space are not developed to the level that speaks to the ambitions that we have. So we have a challenge of that capacity of the financial sector, giving guidance to the financial sector to make sure that they speak to our ambitions. Then when we come to the actual the civil society and private sector, there's a capacity gap in terms of training to these sectors. Also making sure that the private sector has the prerequisite mandate in terms to play a role in the climate space. So this speaks to the policies that we've put in place that are supposed to be specifically for private sector to have a focus in the climate space. They also have a lot of information gaps in terms of what can the small and medium enterprises can do in terms of climate action. So there's a lot of capacity, information gap in this area. They also lack issues to do with management and also skills to undertake some of these actions and projects that speak to climate change. So it is, in the end, it means that they can't access the financing that is required. So then also on specifically, also they have issues to do with financial literacy, because even when you have the money, then they don't have the systems in place to help them access this. So when you go to civil society, as I said, mostly they have challenges in terms of preparing bankable projects that can be used to attract the financing we need. Now, what can we do? What strategies have we put in place, and what can we put in place to undertake this? As I initially said, we need to have trainings, capacity development for all stakeholders in this space. Not specifically for climate action, but even accessing the climate finance, because we might know how to get to develop a project, but then how do you access, and where should you go when you need specific things? We have put in place, we need to have these strategies, national strategies developed. Yes, we have the National Green Growth Development Strategy. Yes, we have the Financial Inclusion Strategy, but we need to now cascade them, make sure that they go into now the local level. At the local level, are there strategies at the district level for adaptation projects, things like that. So we are looking at that as a key strategy that we can use to make sure that these the financing gaps are met. Then, yes. In terms of the green taxonomy, as government, we are setting up this. We are trying to make sure that we have a green taxonomy for all the sectors, so that the proposal can have interventions that can speak to our ambitions. And lastly, as I said, the Ministry of Finance is willing to partner with every stakeholder, and this is a new partnership that we have created with you, and we hope that we can move it forward in terms of making sure that climate action and climate finance to Uganda is enhanced. Thank you so much. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. It is indeed insightful. Normally, when we are designing beneficial programs for various stakeholders, we look at the gaps. And from what you've really informed us, we have quite a range of gaps, ranging from the development of the actual and real climate finance projects, which is very, very important, but also customizing them to meet the needs and also the context of the proposal. It is a very nice insight, and we thank you very much. We're compiling whatever we get in from this conference in order to be able to contribute to whatever the ARIN and the sustainability policy and such center for Makerere University Business School to be using as probably a strategy in trying to bridge these gaps. Thank you very much. Now, as we've heard from one policy or representative from the Ministry of Finance. We would like now to hear from the African Development Bank. Dr. Alfonso, we are really interested in knowing. We have the ARIN. ARIN is a research, of course, institution. We have also Makerere University Business School. It's also an academic institution. But now we need to hear from you as a founder. What are the bottlenecks that development or development financing institutions are facing in channeling climate financing to African countries? So we have the finances, we have the African Development Bank, but what are the obstacles? What are the barriers that are standing within the channels in order for us to access this funding? And how can we really strategize to go away, to run away from the barriers, or to break them? Please, Dr. Alfonso.
Thank you, Ashraf. Can you hear me? Is this loud and clear?
Not really. The audio is not
yes.
so good.
I hope others can hear me, but I can hear you. Good. So first, let me join other speakers to especially thank ARIN, the African Research and Impact Network, for inviting me. And I think it's very important to emphasize the conversation that we're having today on the relative success that we had at COP27. It was not a complete disaster. It was a fragile win of a sort. And the question that you ask about development finance is very critical, particularly when it comes to channeling climate finance in African countries. What are those? The first one is to understand that we have a distribution challenge in terms of resources. And I'm going to explain that. We don't have adequacy challenge. We have distribution challenge, and there's a huge difference between that. The reason is that the quantum of financial resources that we need to solve to finance the climate actions in Africa, that quantum of resources is available in the global economy, is available in the global financial system, both from the public side and the private side. However, there is a distribution challenge where the money that is where it is most needed, unfortunately, it is not where it is most abundant. So where it is most abundant, perhaps it's not necessarily where it is most needed. And the divide between the demand side and the supply side is that our thought or ideas or the work that we're doing across the world, not necessarily by the is basically solving that challenge, solving that distribution challenge. How do we move capital from where it is most abundant, perhaps less needed, to where it is most needed and less abundant? And I think if you're able to create that picture in your head, you'll be able to understand that is our biggest that. So in terms of global supply, we don't have a problem. But in terms of supply to Africa, we have a challenge, and that's what we're trying to do in terms of the look. A lot of the African countries have been able to develop NDCs. Some have taken steps forward to cost them. So in Uganda, we know the cost of the NDC, and within the NDC, we know what is the cost for adaptation. We know what is the cost for mitigation. It's the same in Kenya. Reinvestment, what is unconditional investment. The figures are there. But when you match that with the flows, where if you do an evaluation of what is currently coming in, the gap is huge. And what do we need to do? We need to think about innovative partnerships in addressing these bottlenecks. We need to be able to think about innovative instruments. I'll give you an example. Today, only 2 financial instruments are used for adaptation in Africa. That is concessional loans and grants. 99% of all adaptation finance in Africa are basically with 2 instruments. Mitigation in Africa is about 11 instruments. So can we expand and innovative financial instruments that are possible for adaptation. And why do we need to do that? Because these instruments are critical in bringing new players. Only 2% of, and it's actually below 2%, the adaptation finance coming through from private capital. So when we expand the menu, when we expand the instrument menu on the table, we're able to bring in not just the private sector, because the private sector itself is not a homogeneous entity. You know, equity investors, you got venture capital funds, all of those facilities and opportunities that are there in the world of private capital, we must be able to create instruments that are able to bring them for adaptation. And that is one of those challenges that we've been having. The second point, which is linked to that, is the current development finance flows, and I hate to admit it, we haven't used it catalytically. And what does that mean? We're using development finance to project finance, to do 100% of project finance. So if the cost of the road is $100 million, we're using development finance to finance it to $100 million. However, we should be using development finance as a catalytic fund in order to be able to crowd in other types of finance. And we've been talking about it for the longest time. We're beginning to look into new models, new engagement, and partnership models, so that the development finance is not the money that's going to get the job done. It's the money that's going to remove the risk. It's the money that's going to create the enabling environment. It's going to be the one that will be able to expand the market opportunities. That mundane thing, those mundane things, those boring things in the aspect of finance, taking a project from concept to feasibility up to bankability, that is what we should be using development finance for. So when you combine that together, and I think you get a chance to know that this is something that can be solved. These are not rocket science, and this kind of conversation we're having today are opportunities for us to be able to solve them. So please keep this in mind. Money is not necessarily scarce from the distribution challenge. Number two, development finance should not finance everything. Development finance should take the risk that private capital cannot take. It should rather be catalytic, and we can use blend together with other sources of finance in order to be able to improve and enhance climate actions on the ground. I'll keep it there for now. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doctor. This is so insightful, and now the board is in our hands. We as the academic institutions, we as the research institutions, and of course the community of practice.
Sorry, is it me?
Is it just me? The supply is there. Whatever we need, we now.
Sorry, the moderator. Ashraf, if you're able to hear me, sorry, I lost you for a moment. Is it just me or everyone?
Ashraf, you are, I don't know, your network seems to be shaky. So.
Can you hear me now?
Ashraf, can you hear us? Your network is quite...
You may want to put up your video.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's a bit better.
Right. Well, thank you very much, Doctor. I have actually been throwing more light about the status of the distribution of finance. He has clearly put it right that there is supply. The supply is there, the climate finance, the funds are there, the streams are there, but the challenges continue to be in form of how these can be really mainstreamed and of course streamlined so that they can reach, of course, to the poor. We thank you very much, and I believe from this we can start by building synergies together with the African Development Bank, with the academic institutions that are currently here, the private sector that has been represented here, the public sector that has been represented here, so that we can work together to do something about it. This is long overdue. It is needed. It must be done as soon as yesterday. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. From there, we'd like to invite our next panelist. And of course, we'd like to listen to Dr. Christine now. Dr. Christine, you have been fundamental and engaged with, of course, the NDC Fellowship together with the partnership with the ARIN, together with the Frankfurt School of Finance and Management. But now, as you can see, we are here as academic and research practitioners, and of course, a few members from the community of practice. What can African academic and research institutions learn from your experience? The experience that entails developing climate-related finance programs at the Frankfurt School of Finance and Management. What should we learn from your experience? The floor is yours, Dr. Christian. And if you can also combine the opportunities that are there for us to leverage and also progress in order to have meaningful partnerships with the Global North institutions.
Thank you very much. And also thank you for the invitation. It's really a pleasure. Thanks to ARIN and the University of Makerere. So my name is Christine Grüning. I'm working for the Frankfurt School UNEP Center. And it already was mentioned, we have an absolutely nice project together with ARIN, which is actually building up capacity in the area of climate finance. And to give like a bit what makes it really like our experience. So the Frankfurt School on the one side is really an institution which was built from the banking sector in Germany already more than 60 years ago, because the banking sector in Germany realized, okay, we need to have an institution which is building up our capacities. And not really, not only as a banking institute, but over time it has really increased to have to be a university. And then they also realized, okay, why only train German bankers? It makes really more interesting to provide also advice in other countries. And that's basically the center where I'm working was developed, and starting really more with like housing finance and SME finance. Since roughly 2012, we have included the topics of sustainable finance and climate finance. And I think what we learned is on the one side, the target group is quite diverse. So basically, if we think of like, you know, this typical management and controlling topics, that's something which is already in every curriculum in the university, so the people are trained. Now with the sustainable finance and climate finance topics, we have the whole sector, which with all the increasing regulations suddenly wants to be trained. So this was also for us a really new experience. So there's an immense demand globally to learn about sustainability included there in their different aspects. And that's also why we set it up, our training methods in different ways. So on the one side, the main target group currently are adults. So adults are learning a bit differently. And I think this the participants already shows it today. So we often have practitioners, we have sometimes researchers or people coming for the financing side and need to learn more about the science side, like the climate science. Then we have the climate scientists, which have not the finance knowledge. So one lessons learned is really, at first, it's really important to bring everyone on a level and try also that everyone learns from each other, so that even everyone, because it's kind of a cross-cutting topic. You need to finance climate finance. You need to understand what is the challenge, like from the climate side, what is the existing technical requirements, and which financial drivers are driving these techniques. And then additionally, we have also the political framework. So you see that's really cross-cutting, and this needs to be reflected also when designing such a training. And also, like with working a lot with adults, it's also important to keep in mind that they are working quite a lot. So you need to be really flexible in setting up what kind of, how much time do they have? Do they prefer to be really on site? And I have also built up networks, which is an important tool to exchange themselves. Or do they prefer to have it really more remote at home? And so that's where we developed like really half years university course, fully based on an online platform where people can log in and decide, I don't know, this evening I have 2 hours time, then I can learn. So they are really flexible to adjust their conditions to really add in the learning area when it really matters. and also to be really flexible with the way of learning. I think like we're learning quite a lot in our daily business, but some people are really more listening, some are more the one who need to read, and some read to write. So that's also what we make really ensure that we have a different mix of methodology. So it's including podcasts where someone, even like when driving can listen and learn something, or we have some more interactive tools where the one who will prefer to be really there, or we have also scripts because there are also some people who prefer to have it really more as a textbook style. But what we also learned a bit also on the hard side is compared to many other areas, climate and sustainable finance is so fast developing in itself. So once you set up a whole course or a training, you need in the same time also think about how can you ensure that it's really updated on a regular basis. It needs to be up to date. And as like our clients are, or our participants are often also from the practical side, we also try to involve really many practical examples because it's this theoretical basis is important and we ensure that research is included, but on the same side, examples, how can you apply it are included. So we also, for the development, we try to mix up that we have both researchers and also the viewpoint of the private sector from really banks to actually really make it really interesting. Yeah, and what I think it's the example with ARIN shows it quite well. It's there is such a huge demand out there. So single institutions cannot really meet. And as it was mentioned, it's also about the timing. So we need to build up the capacity now. And so I think the most important is really to set up really more corporations to really enable to learn from each other, like we did it with ARIN. We jointly developed this project. I learned quite a lot from Dr. Johannes and also his whole team. And I think they learned also for us. And overall, we created really an interesting also project which shows both perspectives, because I think that the challenges are different. So I think it's really important to enable have long-term, and that's where also I think, especially from the donor side, we would really like to see long-term capacity building programs. Because like we know it from school, it's nothing you can learn within 1 or 2 years. That it would be really great if we can have really develop projects where we can really ensure that people are trained over time and also enable to set up networks where then afterwards, even when the programs are finished, they can work together. And we were really lucky because we are financed by IDRC, which gives us the flexibility. So our NDC project is really set it up that people are meeting for 2 years on-site, online, with web-based training, and they get both, training and setting up a network. And we can observe they have their own WhatsApp group, and if they share, they share each other their opportunities for new fellowships or like for conferences, or if one has a problem, they're sharing. So because still in a way in many areas there are niche topics. So or one researcher sits at this university, the next one somewhere else. So these kind of long-term fellowships like we have here enable also forward-looking to set up really cohorts of people, young people, encouraging themselves to really build up the capacities. So I think really this holistic programs, as I think we start now often with also smaller areas, it's really important that also topics are increasing. So we started really with renewable energy finance and adaptation finance, and then we had NDC finance, we have sustainable finance, now biodiversity finance is coming in, impact investing. So you see opportunities, I think they are immense, and not only in the finance sector. So I think which is really great, which I know that the University of Makerere is already including these topics in their university curriculum. I think this is really a valid step, but also to go the next step to include sustainability in all university courses to make really a sustainable university, as I think is also planned in other areas. And also to think of to maybe also reach out to the banking associations to also ensure, that to train upcoming bankers, but also existing bankers. So I think, a lot of opportunities. And we need cooperation between all training institutions and universities to have a chance to train people really as soon as possible. Thanks very much for the opportunity.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you very much, Dr. Christine. It has been kind of wide, but you have managed to bring it and package it in in just 5 minutes, 6 minutes. We're very grateful for this very long experience. It really takes an informed person and an experienced speaker to really package their message very well. It has very well been broken down for us, and I believe as a knowledge and academic institutions, we can really borrow a leaf from whatever you have gone through in terms of suggestions, whereby we can really design programs that really are matching, suiting the technical aspects, the political aspects, taking into consideration the very many factors within the entire systems that are really governing climate finance. Key to what I've really understood and picked from your experience is the diversity in the methodology. If I wish our own African academic institutions can also diversify in terms of methods, because what we're currently dealing with today is contemporary. It really needs a very high sophistication of diversity in teaching methods, and also taking into consideration the various beneficiaries for this. We're really grateful for this, and we would like to use this as, of course, significant input for what our new or upcoming sustainability policy and research center for Makerere University Business School with the ARIN is going to be mandated to do, what we are embarking on currently. Thank you very much, Doctor. And now, I think it was indeed my plan to bring the academicians last, and I would like to also now invite the principal of Makerere University Business School to really also inform us, out of his long experience, very many years of teaching and developing of programs. Professor Balwinyo, how and can you please share with us some lessons and best practices, strategies that universities can use, as well as research institutions, to build long-term capacity for climate finance? Remember, Dr. Mugaga mentions the issue of capacity as a gap. The speakers, Dr. Christian, also acknowledges there is, of course, need to develop capacity. Institutions, academic institutions, now have the mandate. We have the role of developing the capacity, the human resources. So, Principal, Professor Bologna, please share with us, from your experience, what strategies can universities take to build long-term capacity for climate finance in the region? And what is Makerere University Business School doing to build this capacity? You're welcome.
Thank you very much. You will allow me to have my video off because of my circumstances. But I'm going to tell a slightly longer story before I get to the finance aspect, because personally I feel that before we get really climate finance, we must be able to get the problem. And I want to localize the problem. As COP29 it ends, what are the issues being raised? What is the role of African countries in the challenge, in the climate change challenge? Well, what is our role there? What I see is in Africa, in Uganda, is one, the cutting down trees for charcoal, and two, the poor disposal of plastics. To me, this is the role that African countries and Uganda in particular is playing in the climate change aspects. I mean, we don't have those industries that are emitting carbon dioxide out so much that we will be on the spot. Of course, when you're listening to the international discussions, you note that the developed countries are not ready yet to make changes in this. And this is affecting us. And therefore, it's very important for them to be able to come up with the resources, with the finance, to be able to fund research and possibly alternative sources of energy. At Makerere University Business School, we have the energy economics department, and we're trying to look at the diversity of energy resources. Uganda has 12 hours of sunshine throughout the year. And we have so many rivers, and there's so much that can come out of energy that can come out of these rivers. And I mean, these two really are so important in what we are doing. But what is happening in Uganda is that we're cutting down trees to be able to feed a very small number of people, poor people in urban areas. That's what is happening, using charcoal to cook. I know that the Electricity Regulation Authority has come out with a proposal to try and increase the usage of the electricity that's generated from the waterfalls, so that people can use it for cooking, because people don't use it for cooking. So the electricity is there, but it's not being used. I have been, and I'm familiar with some rural electrification projects which have taken electricity out to the countryside, and people don't use it. Those who use it buy one bulb. So you see that really there's no, the problem is it's now the cost, and that goes to financing again. We may have the funds to do things, but will the consumers, will the poor be affected? So I think that we as researchers have a responsibility to look at what are the alternative sources of energy. How can Uganda and many African countries exploit the 12-hour sunshine that we have to be able to use the clean solar energy that comes out? You note in Europe that there's a lot of adoption of wind technology to get power from windmills, because it is clean. Now, so the challenge we have is, one, we are not contributing, we're not the source of the biggest people who are emitting all these undesirable carbons into the air. So that's, we're just being affected. But two, we also have our own responsibility in terms of the cutting down of trees and disposal of waste. So what we need to do as Uganda, as African countries, first of all, to try and find a solution to the deforestation. Can we find a solution? That needs research into, can we, for instance, find, are there trees that can grow more quickly? For instance, you're going to find people with acres and acreages of trees, but these trees take 18 years to grow. Do we have a tree that can mature in 1-2 years and be used for charcoal? But then, can we have an alternative to charcoal? These are research areas. Now, if we have an alternative to charcoal, possibly now the funding would be in how can we fund those businesses that are going to go into finding trees or alternatives to usage of charcoal. And then the other is the solar energy. I'm not sure why solar energy is so expensive in Uganda and is so cheap in places like Germany, which have maybe 6-8 months of sunshine. So what is really happening here? And the international community here needs to be able to come out clean on this. Is it that our funding is not as cheap as the funding in the developed countries to be able to develop alternative sources of energy? Is that the case? I mean, we are seeing right now the movement from the biofuels to electricity for the car manufacturing, for the car usage, that this is going to really give another dimension to the world. But where is that energy coming from? That's what we're going to use to charge our motor vehicles. Where is it coming from? Because like in Uganda here, for some time, we're using diesel to generate electricity. Is that what we want to do? So to me, I think our institutions need to get involved in research to find out what are the sources, what are the alternative sources of energy, and what does it cost. And so we would request institutions like the African Development Bank and others to fund such research, because we are looking for cheaper sources of energy. And I happen to be a member of a board of a company that produces sugar and then also generates electricity out of that. You know, that's clean electricity being generated out of bagasse. Now, and the investment is not so huge, you know. So there is also a need for policy for the small mills, electricity mills or other sources of energy in our countries. And this also should come from research, because the business community is going into it to make money out of it, because with them they're pursuing the profit. They don't care what happens, you know. So I think that it's important that the strategies that we're going to use, first of all, do the research in this. Two, once we've established the viable source of energy, try and find the funding. And here, I believe the challenge we may have is that the funders are still the international community, which may not have priorities of funding African energy projects. So African countries must also be able to look out and say, where are we actually going to find the money to be able to develop these alternative sources of energy? There is need for the African society, the African countries, developing countries in the COPA meetings to be able to be more assertive and request that, you know, can we get the resources to do this? Because the contribution to climate change by these developing countries is still very, very small. And as we hopefully industrialize, can we really adopt the alternative sources of energy? I think, to me, that's my contribution at this stage. In terms of curriculum, we're saying sustainable development is something that we need to look at. And I think we're incorporating some of these aspects in our curriculum. Can we look at sustainable development as one of the issues? And the energy economics are definitely looking at some of these aspects, like what are the alternative uses of sources of energy for a country like Uganda. You know, of course, the water-based and solar are best suited for a country like Uganda because it is there in abundance. It's really, there's a lot of it which you can exploit. The issue is, how do we lower the cost so that the ordinary person, the poor person, can be able to use electricity at a reasonable cost? Because right now they're not using it because it's very expensive, you know, despite the effort by government to take electricity to the rural areas. Back to your host.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much, Professor, for your submission.
Well, it is quite insightful. And at this moment, we will have a package from practitioners, from public, and also from civil society regarding how can we really strategize to...
Ashraf, yeah, there's a bit of an echo on your side.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it better now?
Yes.
Yeah. We now have a kind of a strategy we've heard from the experts, we've heard from the practitioners, we've heard from the academicians on the possible way to go. How do we go from here? I would like to send and, of course, appreciate all the panelists that I've had. A big thank you to Professor Osabalunya, Principal Makerere University Business School, for your submission. A big thank you to Dr. Christian from Frankfurt School of Finance and Management. A big thank you to Dr. Olivons from the African Development Bank. And a big thank you to Dr. Dennis Mugaga from the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development in Uganda. I would really also send this one big thank you to the ARIN, Leah and the team, Dr. Atela and the team. We are very, very, very happy that we've had this opportunity to really get contextual information that is really a mandate, that is really important, that is going to be used to build and also shape what we can do about this current challenge. I'd like to close this panel at the moment by inviting Hassan Sewaje back to the floor. Hassan, please, the microphone is yours.
Thank you, Ashraf. Thank you for this insightful moderation and the panelists, our panelists. I think this has really been insightful. And now we hand over to the audience. We want to hear from you. If you're not following the chat, you better do, because I've seen some interesting discussions and a highlight of what has been discussed. So we welcome questions to the panelists. If you can, please raise your hand, and if you can't, do type in the chat. We can read and revert to the panelists with the questions. Let's be brief. If you have a question, please unmute and ask, or type in the chat. We shall be able to relay the question. But a big thank you to our panelists once again. Wait, Gladys, I see. Please go ahead and unmute and ask your question. Otherwise, we are also looking forward to your comments post this session, because this discussion has been recorded, and we shall relay these same questions to the individual panelists.
Yes, hi Hassan. Just seeing some interesting pointers on the chat, and I think we can just look at some of them. I really appreciate the discussion, especially from the financial perspective. It's interesting to see that the representative from Africa Development Bank pointing out that money is not necessarily scarce, it's just unevenly distributed. And so maybe we can think innovatively, how can we solve the distribution challenge? How can we move resources from where it is most abundant and move that to where it is critically needed? I think that's something that we need to think about as developing countries, as research institutions, as academic institutions. What are the strategies that we can employ with regard to that? And also the fact that mostly we are having so many mitigation instruments. Maybe it's indicative of the fact that African countries, we are used to reacting to this adverse effects of climate change. We are not really focusing or channeling our energies to enhancing our adaptive capacities, to enhancing our resilience capacities. And it shows even in the financial instruments that are there. And I'm glad that Mr. Olufonso brought that to our attention. So really we need to use development finance more catalytically. And aside from that, I was thinking of the structural difficulties and challenges that we have. For example, that corruption is one of the menaces that affects African governance systems. And in saying so, if you are thinking about climate finance, so many funders or partners would be asking, what have you put in place in terms of structure to ensure that this money is going to be used and be used properly and adequately? What are those structures that we have put in place, whether it's in financial capacity, whether it's in ensuring that our justice systems are working, our national values are being adhered to, and so that this money, half of it is not going to someone at the executive level, and only the mere 10% or 5% is trickling down to the communities that are adversely affected in climate change. So I think for me that was really interesting, and the fact that we also have the Frankfurt School on board, it shows our collaborative capacity. We are learning from other contexts, and we are cooperating with other stakeholders just to ensure that this NDC agenda is successful at the end of the day. So I think once we remedy some of those structural difficulties from an African perspective, we'll be in a better place. Because even if you say we need money, 80% will go to someone else, and then we remain with only 5% for what it was needed for. So I think that is something that we need to look into.
Sure, thank you so much, Leah. You really wrapped it up, and I see we are coming to our time. So,
yeah, I see Odida Julius has a question or comment. Maybe we can hear from him as well.
Yes, Julius, go ahead, please. Unmute and raise your question.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for giving me this opportunity. My name is Julius Odida. I'm from MOOBS. Well, my one is we really talk a lot regarding climate finance and carbonation and the rest, but we really do not take this into real practice as such, because we have done research, we've read articles and journals, we've had conferences. To me, I think it is high time we implemented these things, and it is high time we actually went to have these things put into practice, because what I've seen with us Ugandans is that we are more of talking and holding conferences and the rest. So that is my major really plea, that if really we could go and put this into real practice and we see the impact and get on ground, yeah, because people out of the town vicinity, you go up country and the rest, you're going to find out that they really do not have the information regarding this. It could probably be that we are not getting down into the grassroots down there. We are probably having conferences in places, and it is actually affecting the information flow that we could probably have as such. So those are my contributions. I hope at least we could go into that to be able to find a better solution to go in practical. Thank you.
Thank you, Julius, for that general comment. And yes, it's very important that we go beyond the research and go to ground, as you have said. So you made a general call, everybody of us here, the research, academia, civil society, government, private sector, to look for ways of translating this knowledge, this research, this policy into actual action. I hope that all of us on this call are taking the action. Maybe we also see another question addressed specifically to Professor Balunywa, and from Simon. Simon asks that how can government, specifically Ministry of Finance, together with the Ministry of Energy, make green energy solutions more affordable to low-income people? He goes ahead to specify, probably this, like you are the educated professor, the pricing of solar, grid energy, lack of marketing and distribution chains. Well, how would government, he suggests that would the government be amenable energy subsidies? Professor Balunywa, how can government, specifically Ministry of Finance, together with energy, make green energy solutions more affordable? Maybe we can hear from you, Professor, and we prepare to wind this discussion up.
I think, Hassan, we can direct that question to Dr. Mugaga.
I see. Dr. Mugaga, please, if you could address this. You're already part of the Ministry of Finance. You know what's happening there.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the question. Yes, there are a number of ways that we can have renewable energy maybe more affordable, and we have had interventions in this space. When we look at solar, yes, there's a time when we had like tax holidays for the people who were dealing in solar, to bring in home kits, to have the uptake of solar energy increased. I'm not so sure now if we still have that tax holiday, but it's something that we can look at maybe moving forward. But the bigger part would be looking at making sure that renewable energy is cheaper. If you remember, if you know, our tariffs are a little bit high because of the fact that the input costs are higher, and vis-a-vis the output, the people who are basically on grid accessing this energy. So if we increase access, it means we can bring down the prices further, and we have a challenge. For example, the transmission, we have a lot of generation. Now we have challenges in now transmission. So if we work on the transmission side and have more people taking up this energy, then it means it's going to be cheaper in the long run. So without giving specific subsidies, we have, at least for the pro-poor, if you know that we have been giving out free, cheaper gas cylinders to people to take up this alternative energy for cooking. We have a new tariff, a reduced tariff for cooking for people who are using electricity for cooking at a certain level. If someone from energy would be giving more details to this, but there are initiatives that are ongoing, but we can do better. But this will be dependent on development of infrastructure, and then also the actual changes in the regulations in terms of the tax regime. So that is what I can say for now. Over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Dennis Singaga. Thank you for that clarification. You've indicated tax holidays. Would be very critical in that. Tariffs, checking tariffs, then promoting transmission, because the electricity energy sources could be generated, but issues with transmissions. And also you indicated programs by government to facilitate clean cooking and encourage adoption of gas as a clean cooking mechanism. I know we have so much questions going on. I've also seen some comments from Mia, Becca, and also Eric Keriasa. Thank you so much. I've forwarded this question to the team at ARIN, so we are going to revert you with a good answer. And I really take this opportunity to thank everybody once again, and call upon Dr. Atela to come and give us concluding remarks, because I see we are already about time. Dr. Atela, please, you're welcome to come and give us some conclusive remarks. Thank you so much.
Hassan, I'll be stepping in for Dr. Atela. He's just engaged briefly. Thank you so much for the excellent moderation, Hassan. Really, it has been a brilliant session. And I just really think that this is a wake-up call for Africa and African institutions when it comes to climate financing. And I'm really glad with the team of panelists that we had from the finance sector, from research institutions, and really from a policy perspective. And I appreciate Professor Balunywa, who has just left briefly, his comments with regard to the same, just bringing it to a very practical level. And so I think going forward, this conversation continues. Of course, we'll still be having many more interesting sessions on climate finance, on NDCs. And now we know that there is a plan to have each developing country to put in place a national adaptation plan. So we are seeing more and more of the conversation moving from mitigation towards adaptation and resilience. And I think this is the progress that we need in Africa. This is the progress that we need in developing countries. And so in strengthening pro-poor climate finance systems, everyone needs to be on board, from the funders, from the implementers, from the policy researchers, from the government at all levels, international organizations. It really needs to be all hands on deck if this is going to move forward. And also in terms of capacity strengthening, I just really want to appreciate all the fellows, the NDC fellows that we had from the Africa Research and Impact Network in collaboration with the Frankfurt School. Through the fellowship program, we've been able to build capacities of fellows across the continent. And this is a step in the right direction. And in further collaboration with the Makerere University Business School, it just shows the fact that more needs to be done more is being done. And I think in the long run, we are going to achieve our goals in terms of climate financing. So thank you so much, Hassan. Thank you, Ashra, for the moderating the panel and the discussion that has gone on. We'll be reaching out after this to share the YouTube link and to share the report after the session. So just welcoming you to our main event in the afternoon at 3 o'clock from the Africa Research and Impact Network 2022 conference. So from us, thank you so much. I am Leah Aoko, and maybe we can briefly have a photo with everyone. You can just switch on your video so that you can take a brief group photo. Yeah, thank you so much. Really great to see everyone. Thank you, Dr. Mugaga. Glad to see you. Thank you. All right. So our technical team will just be taking the photo in a bit. Haron, is the photo? Has the photo been taken? Smile, smile. This will be going on various international spaces. All right, that has been done. So have a good afternoon from wherever you are. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks.
Bye, Leah.
Bye-bye.
Maria, are you still on? Dr. Maria?